The broadcast is live.
All right,
Here we
guys.
go.
Thanks for everybody tuning in, and welcome to the show where Mr. Potato Head is all man, but we know the cucumber gets all the love. But anyway,
That's not a euphemism. It should be.
sadly, it's not. But anyway, I've seen things, sir. I've seen things. All right. So we got the usual cast here of Unusual Suspects. We may have a special guest popping in. If not, they'll be on in March at some time. So right off the bat, we've got Mind the Comics there. This week we're the cast of Star Wars, the good years.
All right.
Somebody's relieved we're not these guys.
Who looks best in the slave bikini? They can get to be Leia.
Not me.
I'm going Paolo. I'm going Paolo. Out of all of us, he's got the best tan. Come
I was
on.
going to say he's probably got the best tan. Yeah, but
Yeah.
I've got no tan. I can.
me either.
I'm definitely Chewy if you put him in there, man, because
You're
like,
not tall enough to be Chewy.
I'm hairy enough.
Huh?
I'm hairy enough. Is that true? Am I hairy enough? I've got.
You don't get to be Chewy unless you can do the same voice.
Yeah, I used to do that voice.
Yeah, I'll work on it. It's just like I'm doing a muffled Pee Wee Herman. Same thing.
Yeah, I don't want to be whiny Luke Skywalker from the beginning of the first movie, but badass Luke Skywalker from the beginning of the third movie. Hey, that's not too bad.
Here we go.
Well, you can be Luke Skywalker going to Dagobah.
You don't want to go down to Tashi Station to pick up some power converters?
Aww. I can still remember seeing the re-release of that when '94, whenever they really
And
everybody
didn't get a nickname of Wormy from the footage. Yeah.
By the same token, I'd like to be badass Han Solo from the first movie, but not Muppet hanging out with the Muppets Han Solo from the third movie. So they had opposite paths.
No, I'm straight. I mean, I like Han in all the movies, but like I'm Empire Han, where you get told somebody loves you, and you're like, "Yeah, I know." I'm like, that's the best one here. And of course, we get the message here. So, anybody been into anything good this week? Any comic books? Any news? Anything good? We got a few things to bring up as the show progresses. Might be another juicy one. Might be another juicy one tonight.
Here's a piece of art I like. This is some comic called Bloom at the from some, I don't even know what company they are. Where are my glasses? Oh, look, I have to pick up my glass. But I really liked this. It's on the cover of Comic Shop News. I guess it's one of the covers that's going to be on. But really nice little drawing there. The story is something about an artist hiring a model and painting her with these tribal marks and dancing out in the woods, and then she gets, I don't know, infused by some god and doesn't want to let him leave the woods. And,
I hate it when that happens.
yeah, but I really like that piece of art.
Yeah, it reminds me of somebody, but I don't know who it is.
It's it looks a little Paul Pope-ish, but it's not. The color on it's not. It's, as far as I can tell from the signature, it's by somebody named Bong Dazo, D-A-Z-O.
I think it's a pen name, man. I'm not sure.
Yeah, as far as I can tell, the first name is B-O-N-G, but I might be wrong on that.
Sounds like
But,
King
it's
cousin. Yeah.
from some company I've never heard of. Where is it? April 7th is coming out. Somewhere in here is a company that I've never heard. I don't even remember what it is now, but I like that piece of art. That the cover intrigues me. It does what a cover is supposed to do.
Right.
I've got an odd box down here in the floor, right? It's probably a magazine box, a real old one is beat up, not quite as, it's not a long box, but it's actually not a short box. And I throw just whatever in there from conventions and all this stuff. And it's kind of cool to like pull out things and find out like you've got the previews and now it's in Kingdom Come. So, hopefully this will be worth millions one day for the first appearances of all those characters, So I'm set. I got 2 of these somehow. Then I found this, and I have no idea. This must have been put in a bag at some comic book convention. I went to the shop. It's an
Yeah,
Al
that
Milgrom
was
Guardians of the Galaxy. Yeah.
that was one. Yeah, that was one of the covers from Marvel from the '70s series, and that came out. I think I have that too. It's like one of the giveaways at the comic shop. Sometimes they come up with they give them posters and stuff. That's where that came from.
Yeah,
So you must have either got it at the comic shop or the convention.
I used to
Yeah,
have
I think-
tons of giveaways like that. I don't have most of them anymore.
Yeah, I
But,
think that was the cover to either issue to Marvel Presents number 10 or 11, but they ended up using that also as the cover to Volume 1 of the trade paperbacks, because Volume 1 prints the original series and Volume 2 prints the Korvac saga.
Right.
Gotcha.
And they recolored it. That's a recolored version too.
Nice.
Yeah.
Now, what's cool about this is it's May 1996, and it's Alex Ross, Kingdom Come, Mark Waid, Spawn, Lady Death, X-Men Onslaught. It's one of those things. If I just read what was in this, you'd be like, "What year is that from?" It's like it's the same thing that's been going on the last couple of months. 25 years later, go figure. You know, is that 25, 24? Yeah, 25 years later now.
Wow.
So that's what blows my mind. And apparently, I was doing a thing where I was taking old beat up comics and I would get like martial law ads for the comics, Nausicaa,
Mhm.
from the 80s and 90s, and I would take them to the library and laminate them because they do it for free for me. So I found some old ads.
Oh, okay.
That's nice.
So, and here's a book that I'm kind of wondering if anybody's ever heard of, man. This is from Black Crown Comics, February 2018 is what this said. It's called We Granddad, Punks Not Dead. Punks Not Dead. And
Yeah.
I thought that was
I
more.
know
That's
that.
probably why I kept this. So, did anybody check out this when it came out?
I think I did. I may have gotten the one that there was like a preview or one version that had like 4 or 5 in them, and but I ended up not getting them. It's weird, but I have this. Well, there's 2 prejudices I have against that book. One is I hate when they they abuse the apostrophe s. Like punk is not dead, doesn't have to be apostrophized. It's like I don't know why people constantly do that. They turn is into apostrophe s all the time. It just drives me crazy. There's no reason for it. But I have this weird pushback against things that try to market punk to me. Because to me, like punk is such a marketing device now, and it's been that way for 30 years. Where I mean, can something truly be punk when it's used to market stuff to you? It can't be. So that's like just always bothered me.
When it comes, go ahead, Paolo. I mean, I got comments about punk. Yeah,
No, because it's just that counterculture is a focus group as well. So of course you're going to market it to it.
And sometimes,
But for some reason, it really annoys me when they market punk to me.
well, punk actually was an ideology, man. It was the kids who didn't have money and a lot of talent seeing other guys that were supposed to be losers making it. And they all seemed attracted to what was the weird music. And it was like anti-establishment. The punk look came from Richard Hale looking at the hippies.
Richard Hell and the Voidoids.
There you go. And he decided to get his look. He looked at the hippies and decided what's the exact opposite. And that's where the spiked hair and all that stuff came from. But what happened is that it's I'm trying to think of what the word is. It
got co-opted.
Yeah, it got co-opted. It got took over. But even the people who were in punk didn't want to be called punk. There's a famous Iggy Pop interview where he's just putting down the idea of being called punk from the 60s. Then you have Bon Scott saying punk scared rock and roll, gave it a shot in the arm. It burned out. Everybody was thinking the Sex Pistols that came and went and all that stuff with the Sex Pistols. There's more to it. But what really kind of killed punk and where it went underground, it didn't die, it just kind of went underground, is that once you get success, you can't be anti-establishment. You're making money. And then all of a sudden you're a musician and you want to know more than 3 chords. You grow up and out of punk. You can keep the ideas, and your roots and stuff, but that's a lot what happened.
The best description I ever heard of punk was the ethos is DIY, do it yourself, and that's what you want to learn, you want to play music, music, do it yourself. You want to put on a show, do it yourself. Right. So that kind of, and that ethos is still around, but like you said, once you've got a record contract and all that stuff, you're not doing it yourself anymore, But like I said, there's nothing do-it-yourself about them marketing punk to us. Yeah. So it's just kind of like,
If you want the real raw sound of punk, in my opinion and stuff, I mean, you got to do a little digging. I think it's better when it's underground.
Oh, I don't even like punk music. I mean, I have very little interest in punk music itself, but I know that them marketing punk to me is just like disingenuous. It's like, oh, come on. I know that's not punk when you market it to me as punk. Yeah. It doesn't work like that.
Well, I can't make you like punk, but there's some good stuff out there.
No. Yeah, I occasionally I like some punk, but it's not really my thing.
There's some things that were also labeled as punk, and I kind of wonder, is like Blondie, really?
Yeah. That's because punk was pretty quickly. Yeah. Punk was pretty quickly co-opted by the music establishment.
You had to start calling yourself. Yeah.
There's this whole myth about punk that was created by the music establishment.
Also in music, anytime that somebody comes up with a catchphrase, it gets tagged onto so many different things. Like grunge is a good example of that.
Yeah. Anything they can use to sell you. But meanwhile, back at comics.
Wait. Some of the bands that started out as punk that people need to know are Go-Go's and Blondie. But what happened was is punk got such a stigma, it became new wave. All right, that's what happened. They lost their integrity. So if you want to listen to good punk, go back to Spaceman 3 and look up the Muffs. That's some good stuff from the last 30 years.
DJs in the Chicago scene, they kind of glommed onto punk as a way to diversify when disco died, and the new wave was just the thing that they needed to reconnect a certain rock and roll sound to the new electronic sounds that they were making. So punk being fast music, you could dance to it, and that was the best way that they could insert that sound. So of course, new wave was going to develop from that, because now those bands had an audience that could distribute their music.
And then what you just said just a second ago about they glommed onto something after something happened?
Oh, when disco died, the disco DJ started.
I love it when somebody says that.
I'll say this, and we'll get on to the comics.
Brandon Graham was more punk than that punk comic.
Yeah, the counterculture to new wave was No Wave, which is Sonic Youth. Now back to comics.
This is the first comic I got this week. Rain Like Hammers #2, Brandon Graham, who is more punk than whatever that punk comic was that we were just looking at. Brandon Graham does everything himself. He's an auteur. He does the pencils, inks, and colors. He's so punk. He gives you comics on the very first pages, and he gives you comics all the way to the inside back cover. But what's weird about this is that and somebody I forget who it was on my my video this week described Brandon Graham as a cross between Mobius and Gary Larson, which is
I could see a little bit of Mobius influence in there.
Oh, he's got a lot of Mobius influence in him, and his drawing.
Let me get it up there. I'm gonna have to set my feelings aside because you named two of my favorites, and I'm kind of.
That's a very interesting combination. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's not. It's an odd combination.
All right.
But what's weird is this second issue didn't seem to have much to do with the first issue. Because there's the far side. The first issue was interesting, and he described it as there's a genre of Japanese comics I've never heard of, which are comics that are supposed to make you feel peaceful. And the first issue really did that.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a lot of repetition. There was throw a bit of Tardy in also. Yeah, that's a good one to throw in. But this one totally kind of new story.
Don't.
Totally new story about this guy who and in this the first one there were all these kind of walking cities. And in this one there's some giant city, but it's not walking. It's just like and this guy like parachutes their spaceships down onto this city, steals another guy's body, and is kind of hanging out trying to do something. And it's like I'm not sure if the two stories are going to join up on some time or not, but right. I enjoyed it a whole lot. And it's like it's about 48 pages probably, and for $5. So it's a good
you brought up the city thing, because even if I don't like a specific comic, I will take a look at it if it has a city in the drawings, just to see how they designed the city.
Well, he's got a lot of big cities in here. So
okay, cool.
That's pretty. Like I said, I really enjoyed the second issue, but I think I liked the first one better because I liked what it was going for. But it's on my pull list, so I'll get it as long as it goes.
Nice. Well, this finally came in from the Amazon, where we order it and stuff. But it's these epic collections are just fantastic. Like, I mean, just the printing, the paper, the little eras, the volumes that they're doing. And I think this is the era we were talking about last week, 85 to 87, from Byrne to Milgram, a little Peter David before he took over the book. And I'll tell you what, man, this is like, I mean, I don't know if it's where I'm reminiscing where I was like 12 and 13 or something. But it holds up. A lot of it holds up. And I'm going to say that this is still Al Milgram's best work, in my opinion. Like, he's just got it together. He had a vision in this one. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I liked his Guardians of the Galaxy best. That's my favorite work of his. But I don't think I've read that. So.
But did he write it? Did he write Guardians of the Galaxy?
That's no, he didn't write that.
That's what I mean. Al Milgram wrote this. He penciled a few of them, and then they brought in another artist, and he kept writing it. And he kept them, like Paolo said it. I've said it twice since Paolo said it last week. Al Milgram kept the momentum going. He followed Byrne on it. And I actually think he kept right up with him with the concepts he got up there. He introduced the Gray Hulk, a bunch of stuff. Byrne brought in the Hulk Busters and played around with them. 6 issues, Byrne got a lot done. Let's just put it that way.
That's where I stopped I stopped reading the Hulk sometime before Byrne, so I don't know any of those issues. Because the Hulk was my childhood favorite, but by the time I was in high school, Hulk was terrible. I wasn't really reading that much Marvel anymore, so I dipped in for a little. I never liked the Peter David Hulk. It was just a little too. I mean, I like the art. The McFarlane art was fine. The Dale Keown art was fine, but it was just I never liked the whole multiple personality Hulk. That just never interested me. The whole deep psychological scarring of Bruce Banner, it was just like, eh.
Well, I didn't really have a problem with it, but I think that at that time, in spite of people liking that Peter David was keeping inconsistent, it really is on the strength of the artist when Todd McFarlane takes over, and then with Dale Keown. But I sometimes think about the time when Jeff Purvis was drawing. Jeff Purvis is a guy that gets no respect, and
he was around in the 340s, 350s, right before Keown. For anybody who wants to look up,
he was in between McFarlane and Keown.
Yeah.
But that's why he gets no respect, because he wasn't as good as those guys.
But it kind of was. He actually had a pretty good sense of movement that kind of got lost because McFarlane was all about the poses and Keown was all about the explosive action. But Purvis really knew how to keep a scene moving, but he just didn't do those awesome poses that superhero fans like.
I can tell you when at the time when Purvis took over the book, everybody was disappointed. Mm-hmm. Everybody was like, "Ooh, this guy's not really." I mean, in hindsight is different, but at the time, because you have to imagine, like at the it's different in hindsight when you're seeing this stuff and it's all done. It's all it is finished. He's there for, however many issues he was there for, and that's his section. But at the time, you're buying the Hulk or reading the Hulk month to month, and you've got Todd McFarlane drawing the Hulk, and you're all excited about the Hulk each month. And then the next month, McFarlane's gone, and you've got Purvis, and you're less excited. And, the whole time you're reading Jeff Purvis, you're less excited, and you're going, how long is this guy going to be on the book? So your perception is completely different.
Yeah. And then you had Eric Larson, just to mix it in there, since we're talking about it. Whenever McFarlane left the book, Larson was in a no-win situation where he would come in for whatever reason behind McFarlane. Then they bring in somebody new, So what was Larson supposed to do? Good
was
on
Larson
him.
on the Hulk too?
He did an issue when McFarlane left. He did one issue to kind of epilogue a storyline. Then Purvis came in.
Okay.
This era of
Yeah,
Hulk that we're talking about is really interesting because you kind of look at the big picture a little bit. Is that you had Hulk he got stagnant. It was, I'm mad, I've smashed. It's the Army. It's General Ross. It's the Rhino. They kind of got into a little of a.
He didn't get stagnant. He had lesser talent working on the book.
There we go. Okay.
When I stopped buying the Hulk, finally, it hadn't been good in a long time.
Right. And then because you came in right when they were doing the mindless Hulk was in the dimensional bridges, just walking around like he'd been cast out, having in this. I don't know, Steve Ditko, Doctor Strange world or something. You know what I mean? And then they fished him in with a fishing pole in Alpha Flight. Yeah. And then Peter David came on, gave us like that last great big Hulk's in the Desert story. And then all of a sudden he's turned him into Mr. Fix-It. Right here, somebody knew this exact one. And all of a sudden the Hulk is a gangster, more or less, a muscle guy. He's muscle for some gangsters in Vegas. And you're like, what? He's talking. It's really jarring when you think about how different Peter David's run took the Hulk. I mean, it rejuvenated in the long run.
With mainstream superhero stuff, it really matters how old you were when you first started reading it.
True. I didn't even read the Hulk, but I do remember the Joe Fix-It. I think it's maybe a Marvel Comic Presents when Wolverine shredded up his clothing.
People were not. There was a lot of people who were crazy about the Joe Fix-It character, but looking back on it, and even at the time with a few of them, I don't know if they thought it was like a brand new character and they were on from the first appearance, like treating it like it was a number one, like they were at the beginning of something finally, you know what I'm saying? Or if they really liked the character. I think it was more, they thought they had a key book and they were coming in at the beginning of something,
Here's a good tie-in to Joe Fix-It. Back when I was in college, so this is probably 87 or 88, my friend Ed was doing some production for Apple Comics. I don't know if you guys remember them. They published ElfQuest for a little while, and they published a few other black and white. I think they published Vietnam Journal, I think, was their most popular one. Yeah. But anyway, they were putting out a comic called Mr. Fix-It. And it was sort of this Silver Age homage comic.
Did Joe Staton work on that?
Oh, I know who the artist is. I can't remember his name now. Okay. But they said, as they're putting this big push together, as big as Apple Comics could do at the time in 1988, of, getting, because Mr. Fix-It #1 was coming out. And so they sent out like advertising materials to the comic shops to buy it. And one of the little bits of advice, I'll still never forget this, they told the comic shops was, rack it next to the Hulk, people might think it's a tie-in. The Hulk was Joe Fix-It at the time. So.
See, that's a lot of what's missing in comics. People who know their audience. You know what I'm saying? They know their audience. Because I totally would have been that kid. I would have been suspicious when I saw the company, but I would have been like, I have to look at this. Doesn't mean I would have bought it, but very well
Howard
played.
Bender. That's who did Mr. Fix-It.
And
it's actually a decent. If you've ever read it, I think there was only 2 issues of it ever. And it's this really well done sort of tribute to Silver Age DC Comics. The only problem was nobody in 1988 wanted a tribute to Silver Age DC Comics. I mean, that's not what was hot. I mean,
who was the artist again, Jared?
Howard Bender.
Oh
That
yeah,
should be-
Howard was used to
Yeah.
be on a chat thing that we used to do. God, 15 years ago. You know.
If you ever see it in the dollar bins, it's worth a pickup. Mr. Fix It.
Nice. What you got? So right before we went on the show, where I came home from work, had dinner, and then like was checking my mail right for the show. This got sent to me from I'm not going to mention their name yet. I'm going to wait and get their permission. But they sent me. I think I told you guys before the show. I think that this guy sent this just because of he likes the YouTube channel. Really he said some nice things. So he said he had this signed Lone Wolf and Cub comic he wanted to send me. So I was like, sure, if you're looking for something, let me know and I'll send you something back or something. Right. Little did it didn't register, but it turns out it's signed by Frank Miller. So Lone Wolf and Cub number 10 by Frank Miller. And then he messaged, and I think his comic book shop got a bunch of books in, tons of Bernie Wrightston. And one of the reasons he wanted to send this to me is that when he saw it was a Frank Miller signature, he didn't want some flipper to get it. He wanted to have somebody who actually likes Lone Wolf and Cub. So there we go. So much appreciated. So, but if you haven't read Lone Wolf and Cub, I highly recommend it. I really do.
Yeah.
I have a whole shelf of Lone Wolf and Cub.
I used to. I got rid of mine a few years ago. I have to get them again. This is another weird artist, Matt Lesniewski, with Matt Kint writing it. Crimson Flower #2. I discovered this guy on like Twitter. He's got this really weird style, sort of elongated people with these strange. Oh, he draws excellent like fantasy and monster characters that are these weird elongated things.
It's a very fluid style.
Yeah, very fluid. I find it a lot of fun. Very, very kind of reminiscent of underground comics, kind of.
Yeah,
it's got sort of an underground, mixed with lots of like. Look at that woman's face right there.
It's like
that's got some Robert Crumb in it, as well as other weird underground things. But this is yet another sort of Matt Kint conspiracy story where this woman, when she was a kid, some assassin killed her father while she was right in the room. Now she's a grown up, and she uses her job selling pharmaceuticals as a cover to go around the country and find this secret cabal of assassins to figure out who killed her father. The only bad thing about it is Dark Horse has the worst physical comics.
I was going to ask if that's one of the covers that have the same stock as the interior.
Yeah, it's self-covered and it's thin and it's just kind of like I haven't bought a lot of Dark Horse comics in recent years just because of that. And now I've got like Norse mythology in this one I've been collecting, and that just reminds me every month that these are just like kind of thin. So I think I don't know that they're any thinner than Marvel and DC these days, but I'm just not a fan of this, really thin paper.
Yeah, Dark Horse used to be my favorite publisher, and here in the past few years, it seems like they're kind of falling apart.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I just read their publisher is retiring too. What's his name? Randy Stradley. I just saw something that after 30 years he's retiring.
Yeah, he's been there for almost since the beginning, hasn't he? With Mike Richardson.
I want to say 35 years is what they said. I think it's been since '86. I think 35 years.
35 years it is? Okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. 99.9% sure.
But one thing that I imagined is there were rumors again in the last week that somebody was going to buy DC or something, or at least license the characters. And I imagine that if AT&T would tell DC to stop publishing comics, that the most natural partner to publish them would be Dark Horse. Not only because of their continued history of crossovers, but also because Karen Berger is working with them. So she could make the bridge to DC.
I don't think Dark Horse has the staff to handle it.
And the money.
I've read some stuff that Steve Jeppy wants to license.
Yeah, but it was gonna publish them anyway. He needs to start up a publisher.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's all kinds of rumors about Steve Jeppy and Buddy Saunders and all these people. big pockets trying to buy things. So
And ultimately, I don't think if somehow either Marvel or DC would stop publishing comics, I don't think there's any publishing company in the United States that would have the money to license their characters to publish comic books with their brands.
Yeah,
Not even IDW.
The margins are so thin on comics that licenses. I don't know how it would be done. You're right.
Mhm.
They'd have to sell a lot of comics.
Yeah,
There is Dark Horse charging $4 for the book, same as everyone else.
You say 4?
4. Yep.
yeah,
because with DC, I found someone who can publish and probably make a profit off of them, but they're not based in the United States.
Yeah.
They're a subsidiary of Dargo in France, and they made that Dark Prince Charming miniseries in album format that was done by Enrico Marini.
right.
And because they already have the distribution channels for all the publishers around Europe who license their comics, they could make money off of doing DC. I just don't know how that would work for North America.
I can think of one North American publisher that has the money and the distribution, but it's a whole different market, and that publisher would be Scholastic Books.
Yeah.
And Scholastic Books actually sell. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know if it's the book fairs. I don't know what their secret is, but
Volume.
yeah, just pure volume. Gotcha.
They've got students captive. That's their secret.
That's true.
They send out a catalog to students, and the schools make them buy books. They were doing that when I was a kid.
Yeah,
Well,
but
my day it was troll books. It
there's
was
like
troll books.
magazines and the Scholastic book order things. You can fill them
Yeah.
out.
Sure, but well, Scholastic may be interested in doing Superman and Batman and Wonder Woman. They would never publish a Suicide Squad.
I'm trying
No,
to think
no.
if Scholastic actually makes original comics, or if they, like with Bone, they had the material and they just colored.
Oh
it.
yeah, they make original comics.
They
They've got their own like line of.
Yeah. I haven't worked in any school since 2014, but from 2009 to 2014, when I was working in different schools, that book fair was the stuff. I mean, it made me feel good that that was the stuff. But when I was a kid, it wasn't a lot of Scholastic stuff. I don't know who the companies were, but it was like Where the Wild Things Are. It was those classic Tales of a Fourth Grade Nothing. It was like actual young adult novels or books or whatever.
Yeah.
It's actually the crown, baby.
Yeah, they had
Goosebumps,
Bone,
yeah.
and Bone was getting through. I was around in the schools where the libraries caught that there was a character that had a cigar and smoked, so they had to get rid of it.
And then the next comic I got was the one that's too gruesome for sleepy reader. That's
Hold
it's
on. Hold on.
Americana.
Post Americana #3. By what's his name? Steve Scroach. So it's got some nice artwork in it. It's a post-apocalyptic story with cannibals and violence and stuff like that.
Hold it right there.
Okay.
There we go. Now we're working. Now this is the guy that worked
I'm
on
enjoying it,
Right.
but it's got some gruesomeness to it.
Yeah.
It's got some, it's nowhere near crossed gruesome, but it's got lots of people killing other people in it. Post-apocalyptic story. The world has ended 100 years ago. Now everyone's fighting.
Yeah.
Just don't learn.
There's a specific story to it, but it's not. It's no more interesting than any other post-apocalyptic story. But I'm enjoying it.
I love my post-apocalyptic stories, but after 60 years of reading many different types, from the last 60 years, not that I've read them for 60 years, but from Andre Norton's Starman's Son novel to Commandy to whatever Doomsday +1, just Mad Max. I mean, you really got to have an original take and theme. I think the last one I really enjoyed was Book of Eli. But when it comes to post-apocalyptic, I'll throw it all out there. I enjoyed Book of Eli. I really did.
I once heard an interesting observation. I forget where I read it. It was only a couple of years ago, when someone was saying that the reason that Americans are so obsessed with post-apocalyptic stories is we basically moved into a country that was post-apocalyptic way back when. because the Indians had an apocalypse, and then we moved in. So we kind of are obsessed with the whole idea of an apocalypse because that's our origin story. You know, Europeans wouldn't have replaced the Indians in two continents if it wasn't for the apocalypse that they faced. So I was like, when I heard that, I was like, that's interesting. Never thought about that before.
What is I'm just curious, what is the apocalypse they're referring to? What?
90% of the natives of North and South America were wiped out by disease.
Okay,
Europeans colonized the whole world.
Well, I was going to
say they replaced the natives. What was that?
I said, so the disease was mostly brought over by Europeans.
No, it predates. It predates because the first time that they started exploring the upstate New York and through Pennsylvania, they found remnants of cultural organization that seemed to be integrating with the with natural outgrowths, and they noticed how perfect they seemed, and they didn't know where they came from. There had been a Black Death type event that had wiped out the majority of the native population of at least the northeastern quadrant of North America.
Well, that's for
it was everywhere. That was right before the Puritans came. There was also like I forget the first Spanish explorer up the Mississippi.
The Aztecs, the Mayans. The Mayans were on a downturn. They were simply dying off, and nobody still has figured out why.
Hey, we don't know why.
Not South. This is North America, up the Mississippi. The first Spanish explorer up the Mississippi counted 200 towns and villages. The next guy who went up like 10 years later counted 20, and they didn't know what happened. Like all the civilizations along the Mississippi were just wiped out. And then there's the Amazon, where once again the first Spanish explorer up the Amazon reported all of these big towns and cities, and then the next guy up, they weren't there anymore. And it wasn't until the last 20 years that people now believe that all those towns were actually in the Amazon because they found them again. Because for 300 years, the scientific idea was the Amazon River didn't support farming, and then therefore didn't support big towns and villages. But they only now we're saying, yeah, that did happen. So the apocalypse they now estimate that 90% of the native population was wiped out by disease. So that's the apocalypse that the Europeans moved into. Hence why Americans are so fascinated and hung up on the apocalypse. Because it's built into us.
Yeah, a lot of people that don't follow history don't realize that all the Indian tribes, especially in North America, didn't exactly get along together in a grand, kumbaya kind of a manner. A lot of them had wars and slaves and.
Yeah. They're people like everybody else.
Yeah, they were just like everyone else on the planet.
Yeah.
The noble savage myth is just a myth. Oh, you're freezing on us, Howler.
Am I back?
Up, you're moving again.
Yes,
you're back.
You're back.
I heard the word slaves, and that makes me think of Silver Age Marvel Comics. I'm just saying. So,
okay.
What I have here is that these are those comics that you hear about, like why are the titles cut off of them?
Yep, this is the returns.
Yeah. See, I'll buy these because they're cheap.
Yeah.
It's still, better than nothing because it's the good stuff. Still smells like old comics, right?
We'll sell them for a nickel out the back.
Yeah. So this is a Fantastic Four number 87 by the Lee and Kirby crew, right? In 2009, I had a long box taken off of a U-Haul while I was moving. Guess what was in it? My Kirby stuff with Jack, Silver Age Hulk and my Fantastic Four stuff. But I never actually had this issue. And isn't it just amazing how you can just look at something and fall in love with an artist all over again? Like this interpretation of Jack. Well, get down there. Jack, move the microphone. Look
Dr.
at this.
Doom.
Just a profile of Dr. Doom yelling at his minions.
I always liked that one.
Yeah. So I mean, it's just the more you look into it, the more thought. He'd been drawing Doctor Doom for something like 7 years. Is that right? Yeah, about 7 or 8 years at this point, and you can just tell he just like grew the character in his head the way he drew him and stuff in here. So it's good stuff. And then this one, it's a Captain America by Gene Colan, and it's got MODOK in it, but it actually has something I kind of miss when it comes to dialogue from the Silver Age. Now, I'm the first guy to tell you a lot of that dialogue is just didn't age well. You know what I mean? It's campy. But I miss hearing somebody say, "Master, your cyborg lives." Master, your cyborg lives.
Can you imagine in real life somebody actually saying that? The context that you need to have in real life to have somebody utter that phrase.
Yeah.
I mean, the 50s B grade movie, it's not going to happen.
Well, one of the reasons
that reminds me too when you're talking about real life, like the bold words in comics and the lettering. You can't actually read out loud bold. They're kind of emphasis for your mind as you read them, but when you try to read out loud and say the bold words louder, it makes no sense. But in your mind, it makes sense.
If you read like Brian Blessed, it may help.
Everything's bold.
No.
But there's just things from those Silver Age books that you go through there, and even though you might run across something, you're just sort of like, oh my, that was kind of cheesy or forced in there. You'll see something like that. I fell in love with the Flash Gordon movie in 1980 when I was 7 because the opening line was, Clytus, I am bored.
Clytus, I'm bored. What plaything can you offer us today? I mean, an obscure planet in the SK galaxy, Your Majesty. The inhabitants refer to it as the planet Earth.
Earth made that whole thing.
Right. And that's what's missing. I mean, it's one thing to get sick of having like villains monologue and stuff, but how many of them are really good at it and knew when it was appropriate? You know what I mean? They didn't monologue because they got tricked into it, so this hero would have more time. You had villains like that who knew when to monologue, and it's really missing. You know what I mean? Dr. Doom monologued all the time. It didn't matter.
Yeah, Tim, did you know that Al Wilson absolutely hated that movie?
Yeah.
A lot of people did. Anybody who was a real old-time Flash Gordon fan hated that movie. Yeah. I mentioned Noble Savages before. Now that leads us into Savage Dragon, issue 257. And this is his version of Thor that comes back. And he's a villain because he's this arrogant god. And he's pissed off and looking to kill people. That's
like the real Thor from Norse mythology.
It starts off with Thor. Somehow the original Savage Dragon fought him, and I guess somehow stole his eye, and somebody else had his eye, some other god. So he first went and stole his eye back and killed Brunhilde, who was the guy's wife, the Valkyrie. And now he's like, and he's got his little son there too. And he's like, now I'm gonna go kill the dragon, Savage Dragon. And the son's like, that dude's dead. And he's like, well, then I'm gonna kill his son. And since he's in Canada, Eric Larson has introduced a new superhero team called North Force. So he just created this new Canadian superhero team. So they were getting their ass kicked by Thor when the Malcolm Dragon shows up. So fun issue, you know. There's always good, fun superhero action in Savage Dragon. So that was an enjoyable issue, and I really do like his Thor characterization.
Any similarity between North Force and another Canadian super team created by a bearded Canadian is pure coincidence.
Sure it is.
Matter of fact, I think they're repackaging the issue where he created North Force as its own number one. People like North Force, so they're coming out with North Force number one and putting some like extra pages in it or something.
Yeah, but Eric Larson knows what he's got to do for the cover.
Yeah.
Boobies. Well, yeah.
Set aside, Dragon. This is a job only we can handle.
Oh, that's hilarious. So I showed you this guy's during the show, and it kind of came back to me when I flipped through it. This is nothing but just something that you would pick up at a comic book convention, right? tells you the people who are there, gives you a map of the place. But it's also full of original art of people who are there. It's all coming back to me. Like,
Cool.
And this is what made me remember what it was. This is Nick Cardy drawing a Scarlet Witch, the great DC artist. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Doing Scarlet Witch. It's got Dan Barrington doing some Scarlet Witch from 2001. And I finally remember what this is all about. And my thing was that it's signed by a bunch of people on the front. And I don't really remember running around having people sign it. But I finally remember the story. This is the year that I met Joe Sennett. And right beside him, he was trying to introduce me to Nick Cardy. And it's probably the only time I've ever gone to a comic book convention where I totally fanboyed because I was looking at Joe Sennett. You know what I mean? He was like, "Hey, this is Nick Cardy." I was like, "Hey, nice to meet you. How you doing?" Look at Joe. So I got some stuff signed by Joe and bought a print and talked to him for quite a bit. And I was sitting there right beside of Nick Cardy. Like I sat in between guys, and I totally ignored Nick Cardy. You talk about guilt.
Wow.
Guilt. I feel awful. I mean, I didn't disrespect him, but I could have been friendlier. But I'm sitting there, I'm like, I'm sitting beside of Joe Sennett,
Fanboying out over Joe.
I was 28 years old, acting like I was 6, meeting Santa Claus or something,
Yeah, Gary and I were at standing in line at Heroes Con to get a sketch by Ty Templeton. And this guy comes up and starts talking to Ty, and he talked to him for a good long while about all kinds of different things. And we didn't know who the guy was, met him. And after he left, I asked Ty, I was like, "Who was that?" "Oh, that's Alex Ross."
Oh, man. The greatest person, I mean, I've met quite a few people that were really cool or whatever, not a big deal. But Scott Shaw, who did Captain Carrot of all people, had the best story. In the 70s in California, him and a bunch of guys who worked at DC or whatever they did went over to Kirby's house. And Kirby and Roz, his wife, were like great hosts. So they're a bunch of like early 70s hippie kids hanging out with Kirby. And Kirby was trying to hint that he had work to do. He had to get the pages in. So then he talked about it as either like New Gods. It's one of the Fourth World books. He took all those guys and made them a band on one page in the book and then killed them the next page. And he was like, "Oh, it'd make him mad, But George Perez was like the most affectionate person I've ever met at a con. That guy jumped up, hugged me so hard, he gave me beard burn from his beard. I don't mind. I have a picture of it. I'm smiling with a thumbs up, and I've got like George Perez pressed right to me. And there's a part of me like, I hope some of that talent comes through the DNA though, because there's a little bit of blood on me, just a touch, just a little teeny tiny pieces,
Wow.
Yeah, it came through. So cons can be fun. Yeah.
And the next comic I got, this is one of Tarna, which I really like the art in.
Heavy Metal?
Yes.
Heavy Metal. But I never got issue 2 because issue 2 didn't come into our comic shop.
Right.
So he's like, maybe it'll be in next. It didn't come in. He, let Diamond know it didn't come in, tried to reorder it, and it still hasn't come in. But I'm like, all right, I'm old school. I'll just roll with issue 3. And I'm telling you, I don't know. It was like issue 3 started a whole new story. I don't know what happened in issue 2, but it's just, there's just a lot of action. And I enjoy the artwork. Not a ton of writing, just a lot of action in it. She's this woman who's this godlike creature who protects the galaxy. So first issue, she was on this planet beating up some monsters. This issue, she's on a planet beating up some monster. Good heavy comic too.
Does it give credit to Mobius for being the creator?
Let's see.
I don't know if Mobius was the creator of Tarna.
Written by Stephanie Phillips, illustrated by Christian Racedo.
We'll do the work. We'll do the work. I've always been told it was a Mobius creation because of the bird that she, the bird, and it was supposed to have been a Mobius design.
But I want to try some of these. I don't know if you've seen these. I saw one at my comic shop. They've got these. They're called Heavy Metal Elements, and they're magazine size, but only $2.99. And I think they're like 20 pages or something, and they collect the stuff that runs in the magazine. So I guess rather than having it in 2 or 3 issues of the magazine, you can pick up, Maiden, Darkwing, The Rise, Savage Circus.
Yeah, some of those I've picked up. I don't get the heavy metals because they're super expensive now. I think
Right,
10,
right.
$15. I don't know. But you can get them at Books A Million. And there's a one or two. The one I did want to get, which was a Kirby tribute special. Of course, it of course sold out. And I didn't think about pre-ordering it because nobody buys the heavy metal at Books A Million. They're too expensive anyway. But I mean, the best heavy metal did back in the days that you would get a Mobius special. They would collect just a bunch of maybe an artist's work. I don't know why they haven't been doing what you just showed longer. Why it took them so long to decide to do that.
I just noticed that there's down the bottom is the little list of everybody who's working at heavy metal. There's a lot of people working there. There's 23 people on this list. That's a lot of people for a company that, as far as I know, is only putting out one magazine.
Mm-hmm. Have you seen what's in the magazine? Weird. I mean, you get a ton of stories. It's the end. You know what heavy metal is. You know, it's an anthology series. Yeah.
But there's a chief executive officer, publisher in chief, creative overlord, editor in chief, executive editor. How many editors does it take to put out one magazine?
I bet you a lot of the people on staff there don't work on it there on a regular basis.
Probably. Chief sales officer, publisher, Magma Comics, sales and marketing manager, distribution manager, marketing specialist, finance and operations, affiliate marketing, managing editor. There's more? Contributing editor.
Yeah.
There's 3 more editors. We're up to 7 editors.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you something. All those people, I want to go through and see who was responsible for this piece of crap that came from heavy metal. Softwood. That was, it's supposed to be heavy metal's funny book, if you will. You know what I mean? I was skeptical. And I'm telling you, man, this was the biggest piece of crap I've ever bought. And look how thick it is. So that's one issue. So all those 23 people, if they did this, they need to do better. I'm saying it. Don't do this. No, don't do this again. You know, this was horrible. Man.
When I first started working at Autosport, on the credits, we had a list of about 20 foreign correspondents, only 2 of which actually produced any work for the newspaper.
Yeah.
And if you're gonna try an issue of Usagi Yojimbo, this is a good one to try. This is Wanderer's Road number 4 from 1988. They just recolored it, but it has this villainous character in there who's just a scary, scary demon. This guy right here, and it's his story, and he runs across Usagi, and it's just he just looks so demonic.
It's the last,
and it's a done in one story. So this just a really, I mean, I haven't read it. I have the original on my shelf, but I haven't read it since 1988. Right. But wow, that one was good. That was one of the best Usagis.
So we got Rob Ripa was up there. We have Vincizo here. He loves Portugal. Dave McKenzie is out there. What's up, Dave? Minded Comics has been hanging out with us. By the bristling beard of Perez, Sanctuarity's been hanging out with us. And I tell you what, man, the thing is that, like, I almost, I go, has Usagi ever crossed over with Cerebus? I mean, maybe in a back. He never has he?
No,
I don't think so.
No. Yeah, I'm getting ready to say if we had a mascot for this show, I'd have to go towards Usagi a little bit. I don't know why. Maybe maybe it's the samurai. I don't know. That's a tough call for me. I don't know why I put that in my. I don't know why I put myself in that situation. Nobody asked, but
we're all Usagi fans here.
Oh man, but okay. Well, there's editor egg.
Editor egg.
Got it. All right. So, oh man, Usagi, man, I'm ready to get another volume or two. Just going to do it. I'm just going to see what I can find out there.
Has the early stuff come out in trade? I think it has, because they've got 2 series colored now. Right?
Everything the Usagi's ever done is available in trade.
Yeah.
No, I mean the new IDW stuff that they colored.
I don't know if it's come out yet or not.
I think they have 2 volumes that might be out in trade now.
Now I know I have him on I think Facebook, and I haven't really seen him make any announcements in a while. So usually that's how I get my plugin.
Kind of quiet the past couple months or so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
course, he's got an animated show that's being worked on. Maybe that's one.
There we go. I'm hoping I'm ready for that. I really am. But so I don't think any of us actually watch WandaVision, do we? Like, I canceled my Disney Plus the last week. I just got it for a month to watch Mandalorian. So I got to catch the first 2 episodes.
I just don't care how Marvel integrates the X-Men into the MCU and brings back the Vision. I just don't.
No. Well, my thing is I've been kind of cracking up, checking out some books on comic book realm and stuff. Like, these are things I'm not going to sell. I'm not going to get rid of them. But these movies and these TV shows, this has been going on for so long. It's getting to where I can finally predict stuff, right? And I've been waiting for people to try to pick up John Byrne's The West Coast Avengers, not because I have a crystal ball, not because I am like knowing what they're going to do. It's like there's only a handful of good Scarlet Witch stories out there. They're only going to pull, and plus, there's even less good Vision and Scarlet Witch stories that are good enough to pull. Yesterday's Quest, they got that Vision and Scarlet Witch miniseries. They had 2 of them, but the 12-issue series in the mid '80s, I couldn't get rid of that. And then when I finally get rid of it, one of the issues popped up to $50. And then there was this in '89. So now supposedly starting last night on eBay, because spoiler alert if you're not watching the show or if you care, the Vision now looks like this in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. They did it. They pulled from John Byrne pages. He finally got credit on the show. And I think they hid his name in the first couple episodes so they wouldn't spoil where the ending was going. But now in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the government finally got a hold of Vision, stripped him down just like in this story, and now we have this guy, from what I understand. I haven't watched the show. This is totally spoilers from the internet,
Looking at that cover from a distance, if you took all the graphics off the front, I'd say, isn't that Moon Knight?
Moon Knight was actually in the West Coast Avengers before this, so you're hitting better than you thought. But see, what I liked about it is that I wasn't a fan of the Great Lakes Avengers that Byrne did, but I liked Mr. Immortal because that guy would just keep dying and keep coming back. And he would like scream and freak out when he died. Yeah,
what sums it up for me? I follow Rob Liefeld on Twitter, and he put out a tweet saying something like, "Oh, for us Gen Xers, it's like watching our comics come alive with WandaVision." And I was like, the comics were already alive to me.
Yeah.
I don't need a TV show to make the comics come alive. They were alive. That's why I like comics.
Right.
They are, they were alive to me. I enjoyed that. I never read I wasn't reading the
it's interesting.
The West Coast Avengers, but I read that original, that one, the John Byrne one from last week. We were talking the Knights of Wundagore Mountain one. Yeah, that was alive to me. I don't need a TV show to justify it.
Yeah, it's interesting for me to see how, any IP that's been around for a long time that gets made into either live action, animated, movie, what have you. It seems like a lot of people feel like that's validation.
Yeah, they do. They really do. Makes them feel good about themselves. It doesn't make me feel good about myself, is all.
Me neither. Yeah, it's like.
Well, I've got an interesting take about it. The only real movie that made me feel like there was a validation was Infinity War, but it wasn't like me thinking validation with the masses. It was me thinking about people when I was growing up that had something to say about me reading comics, or like my mother, who I heard a little comment when I was about 5 or 6 about reading comics. Nothing, there's no angst here, no carrying some mommy issues about that. That's not what I'm saying. But there's that moment where I'm looking at this and I'm like, yeah, you went from worried about me reading comics and trying to stop it to now we got like this everybody loves this stuff in the movies. You know what I mean? So yeah, my validation came from all those naysayers I heard in the back in the day around me. So
see, I never heard any naysayers because people didn't think enough about comics to naysay them.
when they saw the comics, they had something to say. So I kind of
there was nothing but disappointment when they saw the comics.
There we go.
It was I've got my comics on shelves here, and like when I was younger, and people would walk in and go, "Wow, are those records?" I'd be like, "No, those are comics," and the disappointment was like palpable. They'd be like,
I had somebody make a comment It's like they still make books. I'm like, what rock did you just crawl out from under? Yeah.
Well, I used to hear it every now and then. If you, like, I will say the '90s or something. It's not something I really tracked in my head, but I do remember having little comments like, "I bet you got some books worth hundreds of dollars up there, don't you?" Right? Now people say it since these movies come out. It's like, wow, I bet you got a lot. I bet there's some of those books worth a lot of money, aren't they? It's like the Muggles. Who the Muggles are all about. Is your collection worth a lot of money?
Right.
That's how they can relate to it. Money. That's about it. And the next comic I got this week is Crossover issue number 3. This one starred Madman. So there's lots of Madman in this. Cool.
Isn't this one that's also supposed to have another surprise guest star? Because they made you think they made you think somebody bigger than Madman was popping up, didn't they?
Yeah, they made you think it was Superman, but it was Madman.
Well, he did cross power. Yeah, he shared a body with Superman.
And Hullabaloo, right?
You're right.
But it's fun. It's solid. It's a solid comic. It's not great, but I enjoy it. There are 40 minutes on an issue. Yeah, exactly. They're already alive to us. I think you can take me off the single again. I'm still on it.
Oh, no.
Let's see everybody. But this one's got a really nice cover stock on it. I'd just like to point out, this one's got a heavy cover stock. So good stuff right there. But once again, this is a solid B. Not my favorite, but good enough. Solid. Good stuff right there.
I was about to hold up some Giffen Legion for Gore of It All there, but I'm like, I finally have something I can't find that's in arm's length. But anyway. But I mean, there's times I think I've seen stuff that's cool to see it, but kind of, come to life if it's done well. You know what I mean? But I don't think it's a must. It's not like it's going to, it just kind of adds to that little world. You know what I mean? Like if you're a Flash Gordon fan, you got 30 serials. Serials in the 40s, you got a cartoon, you got radio shows, you got that 1980s movie and a bunch of bad TV shows. You know what I mean? It just kind of adds to the variety of what you could do. But I think the source material is always the way to go. That's got that's what made it. That's what made everybody want it. To be a property or where they started and stuff. But
I saw something the other day that bugged the hell out of me, and I finally figured out what it was that bugged me. There's a Kickstarter for a game that's coming out, a board game that's based on Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns. Looked really nice, had really nice graphic presentation, a lot of good graphics and everything. But then the dice were like from the '66 Batman TV show. It was like pow and blam, and I was like, that does not fit that aesthetic at all.
they messed up the theme. That's what that's called. They messed up the theme.
It's like two different creative minds. It's like you had this one that was working on the graphics and the other one on the dice, and they just didn't know each other. It was like,
yeah.
Oh, that bugged the crap out of me. Sorry. There's my rant for the day.
Yeah. The next comic I got was Monstrous, number 33, 32. This one just continues to be good. I mean, it's on issue 32, so if you don't like it by now, you probably are never going to like it. And if you bought 32 issues of it like me, you're probably going to keep buying it. High fantasy, political intrigue, war. All of a sudden, some big characters showed up this issue, but they mean nothing. It'll mean nothing to you if you haven't read the stuff all along. So, but this, if you ever want to check out this series, right. It's in lots of trade paperbacks and collected editions these days. It's an image book. It's just a lot of fun.
It's great.
I hope to roll a stock.
This is a man that he's either seen the dice or he just knows what he knows is Batman 66.
Well, yeah, those are strong enough. You could lose both. If you lose it, you could lose your dice and your sock at the same time.
So I'm reading something that I've never realized I've never finished, and I actually found a copy a couple years ago of the book that was like everywhere when I was 7 or 8 years old, right? And this is going to be mind blowing because I've read the sequels, you know what I mean, and some of the other stuff. I had the cartoon and the movies, and then I realized I've never finished the book. So I got out this 1980 copy with some of the weirdest Homer, Gollum.
That's the Hobbit.
Yeah.
That's the Hobbit. And I had a joke. I was ready for this about who he looks like, and I've completely gone blank. Not a honeymooner. Not a honeymooner. Oh my gosh! But I mean, yeah, the Hobbit isn't a little,
He looked.
a little man. He's
Kind of looks like a midget version of Buddy Hackett.
Buddy Hackett. I'm sure I was going there with Buddy Hackett. Yeah.
He looks like a chubby 10-year-old.
Yeah.
Oh, he doesn't look 10. I mean, wait a minute. You know what, guys? Let me go full force here.
And low res, he looks 10.
Nah, I'm gonna go with Buddy Hackett as well.
Buddy Hackett. And then check out Gollum there, man. He's got that huge nose. I mean, he's supposed to be Gollum, not a
And
troll.
And he's not looking at him. He's looking slightly off.
Yeah, he's
looking over his shoulder.
And then if you're really into this, that's supposed to be Sting. That little
Sting's a little short there.
Yeah, that's
Sting was a short sword.
Sting.
Yeah.
It was an Elvish dagger.
That's like a long knife.
No, it's kind of like it's not a gladius, but it's got a blade the size of a gladius.
A Roman short sword, I always imagined
Yeah.
Sting looked like.
I'm telling you right now, no elf made that. Look at that design. That's dwarvish material there, sir. That's dwarves.
It's actually interesting to trace the art lineage of different artists that have worked on Tolkien material too.
Yeah.
They've had some really, really good artists that worked on Tolkien stuff. They've had ones that weren't so great. So.
Yeah.
And now nobody will ever produce anything original with the Lord of the Rings material just because of the movies. Everyone will forever be influenced by those visuals.
Thing, but the Tolkien estate also dictates what you can do and what you can as well.
I think there was the Hildebrandt brothers.
The Hildebrandt
stuff when I was a kid.
Michael Kaluta absolutely hates the Hildebrandt brothers Tolkien stuff.
I thought it was okay.
I thought I had this ready, but this is the trade paperback of a 3-issue miniseries that came out by Chuck Dixon adapting The Hobbit, and I think this thing is beautiful.
The artist is David Wenzel, isn't it?
Yeah, I was just thinking that. I was like, was that David Wenzel? I couldn't remember.
Yeah, this is just beautiful. This is the way to go. I've got the 3 issues, but of course the middle issue, number 2, has Gollum on the cover, so it's hard to find a decent copy of that.
Yeah, that was published by Eclipse.
And this one I got at Ollie's for nothing because it's damaged. They were all damaged, which is why I think it ended up in an outlet store. But they all still have the poster inside that I haven't taken. So,
Sanctuary is correct. They were originally done by Eclipse.
Yes, Eclipse. Speaking of Eclipse, you guys remember us talking about this a few weeks ago?
Scorpio Rose. Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
These books are popping up now that we've spoken about it. Steve Eaglehart and Marshall Rogers. I have number 2.
Right.
I have number 2, so I'm going to read this thing and see what this was all about. Because people still remember it. And only 2 or 3 issues came out.
Yeah,
I saw that.
I remember.
Got
I remember liking the art, but the story wasn't much.
Well, I think it's got a backup feature that I'm looking here, and I think his name was Dr. Orient.
Dr. Orient.
Going off on a tangent with the word rose, do you remember an indie book done by B.C. Boyer that was called Hilly Rose?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
I
like that book. Yeah, it never.
I
finished.
never got that. I don't think I got that one. I collected his Masked Man.
Yeah,
And I think he did Hilly Rose first, so it was mentioned in that. But I don't think I ever saw it.
Masked Man came first.
Masked Man came first. I think for some reason I never got Hilly Rose.
Yeah, I like.
I remember him.
It just ended, and it's like it never. There was never a resolution. It was like I'm waiting, for something that's never going to happen now. But
That's the world of indie comics.
Yeah,
You just
true.
have to accept that some things are unfinished symphonies.
That's
I'm
true.
okay with that.
Yeah. I like
And
that.
the next thing I got,
Yeah.
and this is Spawn. What is this? 315. And this is a case of I wish sometimes I barely even glance at the covers when I'm at the comic shop when they're on my pull list. And I would have gotten one of the more traditional art covers if I noticed this is one of those dark and murky ones. But Spawn's fun. This is, all these issues later, and Todd McFarlane still isn't much of a writer. But
This comes as a surprise.
lots of fight scenes in this one. I've only been picking up Spawn the last few months just for the heck of it.
Well, did you see the video he put? Well, I saw it on Facebook. Did you see the video for the year of Spawn this year?
Right. It's going to be a Spawn book a week. We're going to have Spawn, King Spawn, Medieval, and Gunslinger Spawn, pardon me, and like Spawn team up.
The Scorched. But here's what was cool about the video, which made me, it wasn't you actually showing Spawn that popped it in my head. It's the fact there's a part in that video where he's like, yeah, I'm not that good of a writer. He just flat out says,
yeah, I know. He's
good writer. And I love that. Acknowledge it, man. I mean, that's cool. That's what gets me about. That's why I can read Spawn and be forgiving. He doesn't even try to. He's like, look, I can't write,
Well, when the art's not good, Spawn is unreadable, which was, when they had this dark, murky art a few years ago, and I tried to read Spawn, it was unreadable.
Yeah.
This, at least, the art carries the story.
But did you see? Yeah, gotcha. Yeah.
The art's pretty good, so hopefully he'll have good artists on these new books that'll carry the story. But I don't think I'll be buying 4 Spawn books a month.
Did you see the people that he's got working on these books? I mean, we started at the top with Art Adams.
Most of them were for alternate covers, though. Yeah. That's the problem. Yeah. I don't know who's doing the actual insides. I think most of them are for variant covers.
Yeah,
which is cool. I'm just not.
I'm not going to get in that variant cover game. You know what I mean? It's. I'm going to go by who's working on the inside of the book, and if the previews were keeping it a secret, then.
But for the first time in 2 decades, Spawn is in the top 10. It's selling, 90,000 an issue. That's up over 100%. Yeah,
and people have to realize next year isn't that 30 years of Image and 30 years of Spawn? Or did Spawn come out in 92?
Don't know.
I think it may have been 92.
Yeah.
I think that's when they all start. But it's like it's crazy. I think all the Spawn, a whole bunch of the Spawn fans from the 90s are older now and came back and want some Spawn.
I just think it's amazing that here we are, 30 years later, and McFarlane's found a way to get juiced up. And Spawn was on the rise on its own to begin with. He puts a cowboy hat. He puts a derby from Bonanza. A great big, gigantic 10-gallon hat, on a Spawn, and it's like the book started taking off again. It was, Spawn was 92. So one of the things about this is like whenever I've shown comics and stuff in the early years, it was always sort of about like a lot of this stuff is just powered by nostalgia, and I've always fought against that, and I still believe it until I found this. It's not comics that bring me nostalgia. It's old Dragon magazine and D&D stuff from the 80s.
I have a complete run of Dragon from the early 20s up through 340s or so.
I don't know what I had, but I had a ton of them back in the day because I just found them in dollar boxes here and there. It was amazing.
If you can find it, the CD-ROM compilation is well worth getting. The problem is now is people realize what it's worth, and it's very expensive unless you come across somebody that doesn't know what they have.
Yeah. So when I think of 80s in that feel, it's D&D, man.
Here's a question for you related to D&D and Dragon. Yeah. Did you read Dave Trampier's strip? It was called Wormy.
Mm-hmm.
That's fantastic. Yeah. And he just disappeared off the face of the earth, because he got burn out on the whole industry.
Yeah,
I don't think I've ever read Dragon magazine. Do they have stuff in it other than articles on D&D? Do they have stuff you use to play D&D?
Yeah,
it's all about Dungeons and Dragons. Yeah, games of other role playing games as well.
You would
I appreciate some of the art, but unless you're playing role playing games, it wouldn't be of great interest to you.
Yeah,
it was thanks to Dragon magazine I was able to bring my cleric in with a 22 pistol or a 38 or something. It had the It was thanks to Dragon magazine would have real things to help you fight like a barbarian. Extend it. It would give you stats on how to fight. Like what they're showing right here. You just never knew what you're going to get. But they actually had a Dragon magazine that brought in some modern weapons with story ideas of how to sneak it in there.
No.
So, you can sit there and like be mad, but you only have like 3 bullets. You only use the gun 3 times. You know what I mean? Like, that's it. They didn't make it to where you could be running around being the Punisher roach or something around medieval times there,
Yeah.
We're getting asked about Superman.
I finished my entire collection of 80s, 90s Superman. Professor Hamilton is my doppelganger in the DC.
I don't even know who Professor Hamilton is.
He's a scientist.
Neither do I.
Okay.
I don't know that I read that much 80s and 90s Superman. I of course love the Alan Moore Superman stuff from the early 80s.
Yeah.
John Byrne's Superman stuff was solid comics, but I didn't really care. The 6-month blizzard that kept them in Smallville is still my favorite part of the John Byrne Superman. That's the reason they thought
They thought
that was their cover for them having a baby. There was a blizzard hit Kansas and they didn't get back into town for like 4 to 6 months or something.
Right.
Like, really?
Yeah.
They showed up with a baby and everything was cool.
Yeah, I liked John Byrne's last story arc where we went to where he killed the Kryptonians on the Pocket Universe where Superboy existed and stuff, right? Then they had a great storyline that was like a mini Crisis on Infinite Earths, I guess, big crossover in the book called Panic in the Sky, where I think Brainiac was the main bad guy. That was fun. That crossed over in all the books. The John Byrne stuff's been some of my favorite. They had Emperor Joker and a few other things that that Ed McGuinness did with the art and stuff. But I don't think. And then of course, then Action Comics that's out of the 90s. It's into the 2000s. But they had Action Comics like 775. That was What's the Matter of Truth, Justice, and the American Way. And he was fighting.
That was a good issue.
Yeah, he was fighting the elite, who were a thinly veiled the Authority. Is what they were.
Right.
I
also like the very early 80s Gil Kane Superman. I remember liking that.
Marv Wolfman, Gil Kane, and the Gil Kane covers. Yeah, that's where I found Animal Man and stuff before Who's Who and stuff. The Forgotten Heroes. Superboy and Superman switch times.
I remember liking Lee Weeks' Alien Superman from the 90s.
Oh God, the story killed me. It was Dan Jurgens doing the story, but I think it was Lee Weeks and Kevin Nolan doing the art. And Kevin Nolan's inks are just great on anybody,
Yeah.
Kevin Nolan is seriously underrated.
Big time underrated. Came up with the logo for Hellboy. Has one of the best Batman most people have never seen. And then when he inks anybody, he's just fantastic. And and a lot of people that do know him from Alan Moore's Johnny Quick. He was Johnny Quick. Wait a minute, what was that? I just messed it up. Anyway, he's in Tomorrow's Stories where he has like this farm boy.
John B. Quick.
Yeah, John B. Quick or something. Yeah, but this guy will make interdimensional portals out of like an old, tractor and a moonshine still by accident. Messes with physics. In
my second to last comic, I finally got my hands on this, which is Terry Moore's Serial. This is a second printing of issue number 1.
Called Serial.
It's going to be a 10-issue series, and it's about this little girl. It's from Rachel Rising and his other stories too. And she looks like a 12-year-old girl, but she's really a 3,000-year-old demon. Yeah, so she looks all sweet and innocent, but she's not.
Yeah. Look, when a 10-year-old girl comes in the room wearing a pea coat or a rain jacket, she's there to start some shit. That's all.
They can take me off the single again. Yeah, there we go. But I missed that for some reason. I didn't get my order in for the first printing in time, and they weren't able to get it for me. So I just got the second printing. The second issue will be out soon. I always get Terry Moore stuff, so I'm looking forward to that. First issue was good. It was interesting. Like he's so good at setting stuff up because. The story starts off with some random creepy guy in a car hitting on this his 16-year-old girl employee. And she's like, "What are you doing out here?" And he's like, come on. He's like, "Oh, I thought he's hitting on a 16-year-old." She gets out of the car, starts to run away.
Yeah.
And he comes out and is like, "What? No, I thought you were into it." And she ends up kicking him in the nuts. He falls off a cliff and dies. Then she goes into the woods, moves some stuff away, gets on her motorcycle, drives away, takes off her disguise. You're like, who is this? Obviously not 16-year-old girl. Then you're like, what is this angle? Is this some vigilante against perverts?
I can just
And
see
then-
theme music being "Get on your bad motor scooter and ride."
But then the next angle is the guy's wife is now charged. The cops think she killed her husband. So she calls up her friend who happens to know this 12-year-old girl who's a demon. So it's like you think you know what the story's about in the first few pages, and then by the end you're like, I have no idea where he's going with this. Who's the bad guy? I'm not sure.
Okay. Well, guys, tonight's guest apparently has popped in here, but we're getting close to the end here, so maybe we'll have him back on next month or something.
Okay.
So everybody say hello to the Simply Credible podcast.
Hey.
Hello there.
Oh man! Now Terry Moore thing. I was at a convention or something, and I found the omnibus. Somebody was selling omnibuses, omnibuy,
Right.
whatever the plural is there. And they're for like cheap, like $25. And Rachel Rising was one of them. So I had a friend who I knew wanted that. Got him on the phone, told him PayPal me the money, I'll get it for him. So I got to like flip through it before I gave it to him and stuff, right? And it blew my mind how Mr. Terry Moore, who was writing music and original poetry in Strangers from Paradise, writing a thinly veiled Friends episode in some of those issues. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
To get deep and get into espionage all of a sudden in that book, turns around and writes something that is the same art, but it is completely and tonally, the tone is complete horror. You would not believe it's the two guys. You talk. It's one thing to be a versatile artist, but that guy is a versatile writer more than a versatile artist, in my opinion. That's what amazed me. I could not believe it was the same guy.
It's kind of like Jeff Smith. If you look at his Bone stuff, you look at his Wrathel stuff. It's a similar art style.
Terry Moore or Jeff Smith?
I'm talking
Jeff Smith.
Compared Jeff Smith to Terry Moore.
Gotcha.
You know, if you look at Bone and you look at Wrathel, it's a similar art style, but the tone is really different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man. But yeah, go ahead.
They just reminded me. You said before you were talking about nostalgia, and the comics don't usually make you nostalgic. They don't usually make me nostalgic either, except when I read Night Streets this week.
Yeah.
And what really made me nostalgic reading Night Streets. Let me bring it over for you. Hold on, I'll come over to mine. And I made a video showing them off. They're from 86, 87.
Hold on.
Only 5 issues. These were the ones that there was supposed to be a 6th issue, but
dude, those drip 80s. Look at those colors. Look at that logo. That is
I
awesome.
like them. I actually like
Oh, that's a compliment. Yeah.
very 80s. But what made me so nostalgic too was not just the comics, but it took me back to a time that's never been duplicated. Somebody's using a nice trade paper. Yeah, this trade paper, the Caliber, we found out, I think we talked about this on here, in 1990 put out the 6th issue that was supposed to be published in all 6 issues in 2 trade paperbacks. But part of the nostalgia that hit me, rather surprisingly, was because I was reading a lot of times when I read old comics, I don't read the editorials and the letters pages or whatever, but I was with these, and it just kind of took me. Like I know Paolo isn't old enough. Howler didn't have a comic shop around. I don't know if Scott. If you had a comic shop around in like 1986 or so.
I really wasn't reading comics again until about 87 or so. So
there was the black and white boom of the mid 80s was so unlike any other time in comics, and it's never been duplicated.
No.
Yeah.
Because you have to imagine that, like, I was already an indie guy, so I was already buying black and white comics for a few years, but nobody else was. It was like your average comic fan would never buy a black and white comic because they saw them as inferior. Where's the color? The Turtles changed all that.
Yeah, it's true.
The Turtles becoming popular and everybody loved it when that comic came out. They created what they call the black and white boom, where all of a sudden, not only were shops ordering black and white comics, but fans were buying them because they wanted to be part of. They wanted, see if they could be a part of that sort of Turtles creativity and monetary thing.
To a smaller degree, I think Cerebus may have had a hand in that as well.
Not that Cerebus was really long, but I don't think Cerebus had anything to do with it because Cerebus. There was a few exceptions to the black and white thing, like Cerebus and the Elf Quest was around. But in general, people would never buy. I mean, they just. I used to have black and white comics all the time. And my friends were like, "Why are you reading? Why are you reading that? I can't read that. There's no. Where's the color?"
Yeah.
People literally wouldn't buy black and white comics until the Turtles. And also what was different was all of a sudden guys like this could be part of the comics industry.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Because before the black and white boom, like I said, there was Cerebus, there was Elf Quest, there was the First Kingdom, but those were outliers.
Yeah.
If you wanted to publish your own comic in black and white, you had almost zero chance of succeeding until the Turtles. And then all of a sudden you had a chance of succeeding. So all these people who, and it's not like like today with the web, with Indiegogo, with Kickstarter,
right.
You can be a successful comic guy and have nothing to do with comic shops. That's like you can be a success and not be part of sort of the comic community.
Mm-hmm.
In 1986, all of a sudden, these guys who had no shot of success at all, ever, can all of a sudden be part of the comics community. They're in the comic shop every month.
Right.
So it was like just reliving that, reading this, made me feel so nostalgic because there was never a time like that before, and there's never been a time like that again.
Let me give you the mirror side of that. The mirror side of that of being 12, 13, 14. And every couple of weeks you'd get a book, or you see an advertisement, or you see somebody selling a book or something in a letters column, and you knew something was going on out there. And you couldn't get anywhere to find out what it was. The energy was there. But the word they used was alternative comics.
Right, right.
Nobody, I don't think they were calling it the black and white boom back then, but when it was going on, it was like
they were calling it the black and white explosion fairly quickly.
Okay, cool. That's why I'm giving you the mirror side of it. The 12-year-old kid in a small town, no chance of a comic book shop ever, no mail ordering services you could afford. You know what I mean? If they were even around.
I can just, a 12-year-old howler say, "Do you have fish police?" And I'm like, "What the hell are you talking about?"
Thank you. That's what. Yeah. It was. Yeah, and that's why I like relate. If we're going full circle, that's why sometimes I'll use punk, the history of punk, to kind of talk about comics somehow, because to me it's like the same story as people walking in to ask for a Ramones record. Who the hell the Ramones? That kind of thing. But yeah, but it was in fear. There was a couple of times there where like it was killing you to want to see what these books were that everybody was talking about. It was
there was something going on, and this brought it all back because these guys even formed. If on the cover they've got there's a little stamp that says ICPA, Independent Comic Publishers Association. So like this guy, whoever the publisher was on this, and has like 3 or 4 buddies who are doing their own small press things. So it's like it all put that stamp on their cover, so you knew they were in the association, and they would exchange ideas and advice and stuff like that.
It's kind of like the forerunner of the Legend imprint from Dark Horse.
Yeah, but like I said, that was just one imprint from one company. This was like it was such a sort of different time. It was a time where all of a sudden lots and lots of things were possible.
Yeah.
Like I said, you could be a small press guy, and all of a sudden, you're in the room. You're in the room with you're in the comic shop. You're in the room. You're with everybody else. Your comic has got as good a shot as anyone's.
Yeah,
and that was
amazing time. And to add to that, like I was saying here, I'm sitting here thinking, you're hearing, you're seeing where I said you could get the idea there's things out there. You know what I mean? Like you knew it was out there. There's more going on. This stuff had people talking more in certain months than Crisis on Infinite Earths, right?
Yeah.
Frank Miller's Batman, coming up. These big books, anything John Byrne's done. There was like the mainstream superstar books events that were just starting. This is exciting. But then all of a sudden people be talking about some of these alternative books. I mean, Love and Rockets, I would sit there and beat my head some nights when I would see that first issue in an advertisement where they're all in a lineup, somebody's got a mohawk.
Yeah.
And I was like, what the hell could this be about? No idea. Yeah. No idea. So that
Love and Rockets was another one that was around just before the black and white explosion. Yeah. Like it was the Turtles who set it all off.
Yeah. Yeah.
The radioactive black belt hamsters.
The geriatric what was it? Geriatric I can't pronounce it. My God.
Jiu-jitsu.
Geriatric. I don't know. Something Turtles.
So this is from 2005 by Ostrander and Truman that I knew I had in my collection, but I didn't know it was from IDW. You talk about how the mighty have fallen with IDW. But I
think I have a page of original art from that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I mean, IDW used to put out the 30 Days a Night books and Silent Hill and all these horror books. Bigfoot by Steve Niles, Rob Zombie, and Roger Corman.
Bigfoot's one of my favorites. Yep, right there.
That's what I mean.
If you ever want to read Corbin, that's a really good one.
That's the one, yep. But I was looking through all these books and all the stuff they had, man, and Grimjack just keeps kicking, considering I've still yet to read a full issue,
Yeah.
Now, you talk about
a decent series right there.
Yeah, I mean, it just keeps popping up. I mean, Grimjack, as good as it may be, I like both those guys, especially Truman. I'm just sort of like, this is that nickel that keeps popping up in the laundry, in my collection.
I reread the Tim Truman Grimjack stories from the 80s and enjoyed them.
Mm-hmm.
Last year, I think it was.
And I got to comment on this. Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends got Simply Incredible podcast into comics, right? So we're going back to like 80, 81, 83 or something like that. They showed the same episodes for a couple years there. And that gave him this nostalgia. Well, there's an episode where all the heroes meet on Amazing Spider-Man. And they had, that's the first time I saw an animated Namor, the Submariner. You know how he got took out? He got took out because he found a swimming pool, went, a swim would be refreshing. While they're like in this Agatha Christie plot where they'll all be taken down one by one, all these heroes. Then there was one. They were doing 10 little Indians. And he's like, I want to take a swim. So Namor jumps in the pool and then comes up and goes, "Arg, it's alcohol," like rubbing alcohol. So he's dehydrating. How did he not smell it? How do you not?
They're moving too fast.
Yeah,
it lives underwater. Smell is not the main source of information for.
It was covered by a special physical property that's called plodions.
Of course, that was the first time that I heard Namor's name being pronounced. So because up to then I just been saying Namor.
Oh, that's okay, man. I mean, I feel like I'm totally forgiven for it because I was 4, 5, 6, and 7 and saying submariner.
Oh yeah, a lot of people did.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's the one out of all these names I get wrong. That's the one that's the most forgivable because I wasn't the only one, and I was a kid.
And I remember the X-Men episode where the Firestar voice actress kept saying Magneto. Of course, Magneto is a car part, so that's actually the one that's correct.
My favorite episode, I mean, I could do a whole show on Spider-Man Amazing Friends just by the memory. They showed the Swarm episode out of all of them. A freaking horrible villain that was a swarm of bees from the Champions in the 70s. And then you had Video Man. Video Man was the stuff. That was the one. Thin Man, 2-dimensional arcade man comes out looking like 4-bit not 8-bit, not 6-bit, 4-bit. And when he lifted his paper thin arm, Space Invader bullets came out in the real world. That was the stuff. That was the one that got me. I mean, it was a good morning when I had my Fruity Pebbles and they're showing that episode. I'm like, everybody be quiet. You know?
And from what I remember, Video Man was the most recurring villain.
And he was in like 2 episodes, 1 episode. Yeah. They just kept.
No, there was a Video Man comeback. Somebody rebuilt his arcade machine.
I love when Paolo gets excited. Look at this face right now. Yeah, that's
Did you watch a game show that was on TBS way back in the day called Starcade?
Yeah,
where they would play video games.
Yeah, and tournaments around Burger Time was the stuff on that one. That was the one. Yeah,
I remember that one.
Oh, we got a question here. We should take a question of the week on how to pronounce things. That should be the gimmick. Towards the end of the show, we pick one question on how do you pronounce something correctly. Is it low key or low kai?
Low key.
I've always heard it low key.
Yeah.
It's low. Yeah, it's low key because it's comes from Old Norse, and the closest you have nowadays is Danish or Norwegian, and that's how they pronounce it.
Yeah, loci is 2 locuses, so it's a math term.
The question we all have for Tim this week is: do you know who Bob Lubber is?
Is this a trick?
No.
No.
Bob. Rob.
L-U-B-B-E-R.
Bob Lubbers.
No.
Lovers, yeah. And you know he only died in 2017.
Yeah, he was like in his 90s.
Who was? No. Who is this? Like some old penciler or something? What is it?
Last week when we were doing the show on Friday without you, I was showing off my covers to The Human Fly. Remember that series?
Yeah.
Which Scott had never seen. And I haven't had them out in years. And as we're looking at them, I was like, I saw the signature. He on like the later issues and 4 covers. He did 4. I see the signature Lubbers, Lubbers, and I was like, who the hell is Lubbers?
Sounds like a pirate.
How have I never noticed his signature on these? And none of us had ever heard of him. And it turns out
I remember his name appearing in a couple of issues of 1950s Atlas comics. But
it turns out, he was a Golden Age artist who in the 50s became the Tarzan comic strip artist.
Are you serious?
Yeah, and he's like famous in Tarzan circles for his Tarzan comic strip. And then for some reason he did like those 4 covers for Marvel in the 70s, which meant that between him, Lee Elias, and Frank Robbins, there were 3 Golden Age artists who worked on that strip.
Nice.
The Human Fly. But it's like all of us were like, how have we never heard of this guy before?
Yeah. No, we spent like 20 minutes looking up stuff on him right here on the show.
Yeah.
Well, what makes it even more weird is that, was it last Saturday or Sunday? We went to about 30, 40 minutes down the road to an antique shop. I have Human Fly #1 Sunday, and I found every issue of the Human Fly for like $2.50 a piece. If I'd only known, if I'd only known.
4 of the latter covers were penciled by Bob Lubbers, who I'd never, even though I've had those issues since I was a kid, I never really heard.
You know what? That's like that's like the second greatest trivia question to ask somebody in the comics. The first one would be, what are Black Adam's powers when you spell out his Shazam? Nobody knows that. But anyway. Shaz Adam, I think, is what they're changing his name to. But here's our badge. This is going to be our badge.
Adam? Lord.
Will be our badge of badass. Disclaimer on Cavern of Chaos soon. Because we know all their secrets with their Marvel shows. That's all there is to it. So when they show up at my door, I'll be concerned,
Ninjak or Ninja K, says Simply Incredible Podcast. Well, it was always Ninjak until recently when they decided that he was Ninja K.
Look, I'm not being a smart aleck. I'm really not. But, I mean, seriously, in the last year, is anybody really still reading Valiant? I'm surprised.
I read some of the Ninjak stuff where they decided there was, going back in history, it was a retcon, going back in history, there was this ninja program where Ninja A was the first one, Ninja B was the second one, Ninja C was the third one, and now we're up to
That's
Ninja
right. They
A.
ripped off Grant Morrison's X-Men explanation for
Weapon A,
Wolverine.
yeah, We 3 to Weapon 10. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Ninjas.
When they get to Ninja U, they'll have a whole academy of them.
Mhm.
Why, when you're a company as small as Valiant, where in the world do you feel the need to do a retcon? You know,
I don't know.
why? It makes no sense. Nobody. Oh wow.
But
And besides, you have a name that just rolls off the tongue. Who are you? Ninjak.
right.
Yeah.
Ninja K sounds like a cereal. Like Special K, Ninja K. You know,
Yeah.
I
gonna
start
market
out
that as a
my
kid's
morning
cereal.
with Ninja K's.
It's a girl's name. Ninja K. I'm K. What's up? Yeah. All right, guys. You guys about ready to wind this round in whatever?
Wow. Let me see. Did I have anything else to go over?
I have a bearded dragon to give a bath tonight.
Nah.
That just
Hey,
ain't
right,
hey. Keep your sex life private, okay?
Yes.
We don't want to hear about your euphemism.
out here to dragon.
I might have to go on a not a show. We're just gonna have a Zoom meeting with other Portuguese comics fans because I've been recruited to defend Stan Lee because of the recent book with his expose.
It's interesting
See,
you brought that up.
I've never been a Stan Lee fan, so I feel no reason. Matter of fact, I figured out when I was a kid that Stan Lee was lying to me. So I've never been a huge Stan Lee fan.
Since that book came out, I've seen nothing but people coming up on Facebook groups, either pro or whatever. It's like, stop ripping on Stan Lee. You know, it's like, okay, fine, but I don't feel like he's above criticism.
No.
Right.
The thing I think, to me, that most people are losing sight of is, regardless of who did the most work on, what aspect, like who wrote what, who created what, to me, is Stan. And granted, I don't know all the legal ramifications, if they're NDAs or, whatever may have been in place. Stan Lee had the chance multiple times to do right by Kirby and to get things done for him, and actively chose not to.
Guys, I never do. I've never done this before. Try to go up with a theme or go up against the word chaos in our title, but I think we ought to have a Stan Lee talk next time we're all together here. Just get it out. I mean, for once, to have a show where the title actually matches what we're talking about.
For me, just a quick Stan Lee thing is that. It's the old saying that when somebody tells you who they are, believe them.
Mm-hmm.
And Stan Lee always said, you can't believe me. My memory's terrible, and I take credit for everything. Stan Lee said many times. He wrote.
I'm the guy that, for part of my intros for some of my videos, off and on for like a year and a half, was a picture of Jack Kirby saying, "Hello, I'm Jack Kirby. I created Stan Lee."
Stan Lee, right?
I have an old video where I'm like, Stan Lee is calling me on the phone while I'm trying to do I think it was a Sword of the Atom review. This is like 2011. And I'm like, no, just because, you took Jack Kirby, you don't get my Jack Kirby knife, because you're just going to claim you made it.
I remember your Jack Kirby knife.
Something like that. Yeah. I mean, part of this channel used to be pointing out stuff about old Stan. And I just recently came around to forgiving.
It just seems like we've gone from a point to, we realized Stan was a human being and he had flaws, to any criticism of him these days is seen as you're bashing him, and it's like, when it may not be the case.
Yeah. In any case, I've been taking notes, so I can tell you what he actually created between 1941 and 1958.
But what I found interesting in reading an article about the book, the one guy said that he was talking about Stan Lee's life in general.
Right.
And he divided. He said he found a new divide. Like, he would divide Stan Lee's life up into, before 1961, the Fantastic Four, after he left Marvel. And he said he discovered a new division which he hadn't known before or thought about before, was when after Stan Lee had his first talking cameo, and I think he said it was the Hulk, one of those Hulk movies. He said that's when all the Hollywood con men really started glomming on Stan. He's like, after that point, he was like, it was like before that point, there were some Hollywood con men, there were some minor league con men around Stan, because Stan was always looking for the next deal. He was always looking to do stuff. So he would attract, con men, Hollywood con. But he said after that cameo, the number of sort of, the con men who were hanging around trying to take advantage of Stan, like, went up to the big leagues. And I was like, oh, that's an interesting division that I'd never heard of, never thought about before, because I don't know anything about Stan's Hollywood life.
Well, my thing is that I've had many conversations about Stan and heard many cool comments that I don't try to claim as my own, but I can't cite them. I've heard a little bit. Somebody in this group here, I might say something that you told me about Stan and just say that was me, But my version of Stan Lee is always going to be the Flim Flam Man from Jack Kirby's Mr. Miracle. That's how I'm always going to view Stan. And anything else, I mean, I got a little forgiveness for him, because you do have to realize even if he took credit for a lot of stuff he didn't do, and he was a guy who just happened to be around the office and gave a good interview, he did steer the ship and keep a lot of things straight, if that makes sense.
To me, Stan's greatest contribution to comics was deciding, I don't want to make comics for 8-year-olds. I want to make comics for 14-year-olds.
There we go.
I think that changed the trajectory of comics.
Right.
Yeah.
And I want to make comics for smart 14-year-olds. I think that to me, that's his greatest contribution, because no one else had the sort of
vision.
Not even vision. The vision didn't matter as much as, well, the vision, of course, mattered. I shouldn't say it didn't matter. He had the vision and he had the means. Because if any DC editor had said that, their boss would have just said, no.
Right.
The reason Stan Lee could do it was because he only had one guy to convince, and that guy wasn't even paying attention to if the comics were for 18-year-olds or 14-year-olds. He didn't care.
Mm-hmm. Get it? Not the vision. Not the vision. Get it? No, sorry. Go ahead.
So to me, that was his greatest, regardless of who created what and who did. That was his greatest contribution to me, is just deciding that he wanted to make comics for older, like I said, smart 14-year-olds, and that changed everything. Because when you make comics for smart 14-year-olds, then college kids can start reading them, and then you want to start making comics for college kids. That finally, Slavey reader.
I'm going to leave the puns to Scott. Apparently,
yeah, don't.
Start in the Scott area there.
That's like giving an arsonist a point.
I think it was your vision.
I don't know why you're showing the vision's crotch. I'm like, what is he doing?
No, I'm hurting your eyes, sir. It was the word vision.
Yep.
But anyway, so next week, I guess we're going to do the Stan Lee show.
We'll talk about Stan Lee.
We'll do it.
Earlier in the show, Jared was talking about hindsight. Well, you can't really rely on hindsight anymore, because that was 2020.
You made him pun. You did.
That's right. Be careful what you ask for.
Yeah. He's punned before, he'll pun again.
That's right. I'll end up in a penitentiary.
All right, guys. Thanks for everybody that's stuck through this, and I'm glad to see the the cast of usual suspects here tonight doing all this stuff. So tune in next week. It sounds like there's going to be a Stan Lee show. Which
all right.
You think the puns are bad tonight? So, I may show up with a pair of sunglasses that I may or may not have smacked off his head.
You should title the next show. You can title it "Funky Flashman Theater."
Perfect. All right, everybody, have a good night. Be excellent to each other.
Bye.
Bye.
Have a good one.